Good morning. It is so wonderful to see so many faces, some familiar faces and some new faces. We have spent the last 3 days really talking about diversity in tech, and the theme this morning is how you can bring your authentic self to work and how we can really leverage diverse perspectives to ignite innovation. So quick, by show of hands, how many of you have been to our Diversity in Tech series over the last 3 days? Show of hands. All right, wow. Just to get the engagement and the noise meter going and wake everybody up this morning, let's make some noise. How many people have found these sessions awesome, inspiring, and insightful? All right. So Accenture and Avanade have just been delighted to sponsor this particular track. And we really have found these stories very compelling. So I'm joined today by 3 Accenture colleagues. We're going to continue to keep it real in terms of sharing stories and impact, and really talking about that human impact when you can bring your full self to work. So I'm Elizabeth Derby. I'm the Global Head of Inclusion and Diversity at Avanade. And I am joined today, and I'm just going to ask Accenture and Avanade colleagues in the room to raise your hands, because we have a wealth of knowledge in this room. So I'd like to tap into our 3 panelists, but also encourage you to talk to others and ask them what their superhero power is when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I'm also excited that we have an opportunity to affect change externally. So at your table, you have these paddles. In lieu of swag, so this one, I'm excited to have one less piece of swag to carry home in my suitcase. We thought you would feel the same. And so in lieu of swag, you each received a ticket when you came in the door, and you will be able to we will be making a charitable contribution to one of 3 charities. So on your way out, there are voting boxes in the back. And please do share your perspectives in terms of which of the 3 charities resonates with you. So it's Opportunity Fund, Out and Equal, and Autism Speaks. So as we think about the topic of bringing your full self to work, many of us may cover in the workplace. There's some interesting statistics in terms of the impact, not only to individuals, but to the organizations. There was some research that shows, across 3,000 respondents, 7 countries, 61% of people cover some aspect of themselves in the workplace. For LGBT, that's 83%, blacks, 79%, women of color, 67%, women 66%, and Hispanics, 63%. Interestingly, cisgender white men also cover, and we heard many stories, 45%. So by show of hands, how many of you have covered some aspect of your identity and didn't feel that you could bring your authentic self to work? Great. Pretty big numbers. It's interesting, Accenture has done some great research in terms of getting to equal and really talking about when we can't bring our full selves to work, the impact that has on innovation and being able to innovate better and faster for our clients. So in cultures where there is that inclusivity, we get a 6 times boost on our innovation potential. That, to me, is powerful as we think about our clients and how we're serving them in the marketplace. So I'd like to dive into our panel. We have Nelly Barrero, who's a managing director at Accenture, global head of inclusion and diversity. Melissa Summers, and I think many of you had the opportunity to hear Melissa on Monday, and she's with Accenture in our chief information officer team, leading that. And Robert Wickel, who's with our AMBG group as an advisory lead. So with that, we are going to get some great insights, ask people to share their stories. Melissa, let's start with you. So as you think about advice that we would share, what advice would you share in terms of really bringing your authentic self to work, and how have you seen that show up in the workplace?
I think one of the things that is really beneficial to diverse teams is the variety of different leadership skills that people, or strengths that people bring to the teams. So I think thinking about how you can, act on those strengths and act on those leadership skills. So, for many years, I got feedback that I was very quiet, although people who work with me day to day wouldn't say that, but in general, I'm a little bit introverted. I listen a lot and don't necessarily speak up first in a meeting, although now twice I've gotten the first question. So, one of the things that if I have other people on my teams that share a similar, trait, I suggest, maybe you want to speak up early in a discussion to make sure that your opinion is out there. And, I encourage them not to change their, personality and become extremely outspoken, but use a strategy to overcome that and really make sure that your voice is heard, even if you're a bit more of an introvert or a quieter person.
Yes, and there have been some great perspectives. If you share an idea in a meeting and you're not given credit, you could have somebody else around that table be your advocate or your ally and reattribute the idea back to you. So I think that's another good strategy in terms of just having your ideas heard, right? Nellie, we were having a good conversation yesterday in terms of, sometimes it is harder, right, to show up as your authentic self. Can you tell us a story about when perhaps that may have been harder for you, and how do you have that courage to show up every day as your authentic self?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here with us today. So many stories to share, right? It's been a long journey of leading inclusion and diversity at Accenture. But I want to talk about a more recent one. I have been in this journey of leading this practice for quite some time, and about 2 years ago, I decided to take this practice external within Accenture and serve our clients around I&D because I felt we had a lot to say around this space. And I've known throughout my journey that there are a couple of things that I need to be aware of when it comes to bias. I'm very aware of the bias that may exist when it comes to me as a woman, me as a Latina, me as a New Yorker from the Bronx. I get it, right? I understand all these things that go associated with that. So I, very early on, made a conscious decision to focus on establishing my brand. And my brand was going to be a brand of courage, because I wanted to advocate for myself and for others, no matter what difference was represented. So internally, I have done that within Accenture globally. But this particular time, I was actually at a client site, and I was sitting with a bunch of leaders in a room, one which was being a little bit challenging. I don't want to say difficult, but challenging. And I'm, sort of sensing the energy in the room. Everybody's getting a little bit nervous. It had to do with one segment of inclusion and diversity this leader just was not budging on. And I had that inner voice come in. I said, okay, Nellie, who are you? You're a person of courage, so show up. And I turned to that leader and I said, you have two options. Option A is we roll up our sleeves, we look at the strategy we've developed for you, we start working on addressing the gaps, and we can celebrate successes 1, 2, 3 years out. Or option B is you choose not to execute on the strategy, and then you continue to admire the problem for year 1, 2, and 3. So as you can imagine, that didn't go very well in the room. People were a little stunned. And I'm thinking, yes, I'm brave, right? So he looks at me, he lowers his glasses. I got the look like that. I know what that means because I have glasses, so I do that too when I'm a little bit annoyed. So I kind of adjusted mine a little bit higher. And then he said, roll up your sleeves, let's get started. So once again, I think around this topic to close this out is, this is heavy lifting. This is not easy. We're dealing with people with lots of biases, with different experiences. That doesn't make them bad or good. It makes some people that need to have a safe space to have a conversation, to talk about how to show up as leaders. So that was one example of being authentic to who I am.
Mm-hmm. Great example. Robert, as we were walking over, we were talking about covering, right, and the impacts to individuals, to the organization. Can you share a story that brings that to life for us?
Yes, of course, and here's a question that early in the morning, but let's talk a little bit about myself. So I think during your career, you develop a narrative about yourself that you feel comfortable with. And my narrative was always my family and my kids. So this was always the strong part that I brought to any kind of meeting, any kind of new client situation, or even in recruiting, right? This is something you talk about and you have this sparkle in the eye saying this makes you a good person somehow. It feels good, right? The safe harbor that we all have. Now, as matters went on, I ran into a divorce. And suddenly, I felt very vulnerable with the same story. So my narrative was gone. And actually, until today, I partly covering. So I was last night at a dinner, I don't know, Seth, whether you were in the room or not. I left out this most important part of the discussion at that evening because I just didn't feel good with it, opposing it, but it would have been important to bring my true self to work. Right? And it took me more than 2 years to get back to a narrative that I could stand up to, saying, yes, I don't feel like people are looking at me saying, oh, poor you, or whatever the reaction is, which you don't want to have. And so, yes, I was covering. And still today, I'm partly covering that story.
Thank you for sharing. Can you think of a time where maybe you didn't share a differing point of view, whether it was in a client meeting, for fear of being judged?
Oh, yes. And it actually comes to our diversity work within Accenture in Germany, where I felt for a long time the way we are approaching it is not the right thing. The problem is the way how we are approaching it. That's why we are not successful. But you couldn't argue and stand your point of view saying this whole thing doesn't work out in the way it is set up because it has become kind of a mantra. It's like world freedom. You can't argue that this is wrong in the way we are approaching it. And so I was holding back with that opinion until probably last year. I just said we have a different problem to solve. We're solving for them the wrong problem. And I didn't earn a lot of applause with that thing. But I did hold back because you were suddenly in a bad camp if you would argue against the way the firm would execute it.
Interesting. The other night at one of the receptions, I was having a similar conversation with one of our colleagues from the Nordics in terms of how we might approach things. And so I think you can look at things globally, but you really then do have to understand the local culture and what is the root cause that we're really trying to address.
Exactly.
Interesting. And this is a question for any of the panelists. As we think about the need to innovate better and faster and bring the right teams together where people can show up and share their points of view, where have you seen this work and how have you flexed your own leadership style in terms of bringing teams together? So how have you flexed your own leadership style in terms of bringing diverse teams together to deliver the best result for individuals and for our clients?
So I think the one is obviously demonstrating that you are yourself part of the team, right? So that inclusiveness for me starts if how you are starting your team meetings and all these things. So how are you setting things up? But more importantly, I try to get the team thinking in terms of the experience they deliver. And if you think about experience, then suddenly the roles get very different. It is not so much the technical expert versus the more experienced designer or whatever the role is within a team. It is about what are we jointly offering for our clients, for ourselves, and then it starts equaling out in a different way how the team works together. And this creates, for me, a quite fascinating environment, how we can innovate or strive for different results in terms of thinking about the experience. And it's actually fun, right? Because you start experimenting with that experience and how it gets across and everybody gets out of him or herself in a different way.
Yes, Nellie.
And if I can build on that, as leaders in a room, and I'll take leaders first and then I'll take everyone else, and everyone is a leader, I get that, right? But as the head leader in that room, I think it's very important that you ask yourself, what bias do you bring to the table? do you bring to that meeting? And some examples of that are, I mentioned earlier that I'm aware of some of the bias that I face sometimes. So you hear this accent that I have, right? And for some people, the way I sound is an indicator of my level of intelligence or lack thereof, right? That is a reality. And not everybody will agree with that. But for those of us that have an accent, we sometimes feel, right? We feel that pressure to try to sound different. In that case, some people decide they're going to shut down a little bit. And when you shut down a little bit, it continues to be the pattern. And when that continues to be the pattern, then when it comes time for performance discussions, then you're known as the person that doesn't add value, that doesn't have an opinion, that doesn't engage in conversation. And by the way, maybe you don't care, right? So as leaders, I tell leaders all of the time, be very aware of how you are engaging with your team. Be very aware of the bias that even goes into play when you're sending out an email to your entire team. So if there's no rhyme or reason, if it's not alphabetical, if it's not by level, then it probably is by those people that are closest to you first. And everybody else comes in the middle or last. So what happens? When that happens way too many times, you start, if you're at the end of that email chain all the time, or that distribution list, it's a clear message, well, I'm not in with that leader, right? There's so many things that we do every single day that cause these micro inequities to be felt, and then micro advantages for others. So as you think about how you're leading, as you think about how you're showing up, think about what change do you need to make to showcase a leadership style that is all-inclusive.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to that, I think each of us can create this dynamic in big and small ways. Oftentimes it is those very small actions. And it's interesting that you mentioned that email example, because I do sometimes find myself looking, where did I fall in the pecking order on this email chain? But I've never really thought about it in that specific way. So I always like to have a strong call to action. What can we each do differently in terms of how we're showing up, how we are leading, and how we're bringing others along on the journey? And Melissa, we were talking about how we can empower others when they may not feel as comfortable speaking up. So you had shared some stories about kind of your 25-year-old self, right? So how, thinking back to that time, what advice would you give to help empower others? And what advice do you now share with people today?
So I think one of the things that kind of goes along with the other question as well, and maybe it's something I would have enjoyed having my 25-year-old self do, is I think, enabling people to come with you to a meeting or share their work that they've done through storytelling as well, really, so you see those diverse stories of the team members. So, for example, in some of the diversity and inclusion work that I do for our organization, we've had members of some of our working groups come and present to our leadership group and really tell some powerful stories. Or we do that with our accessibility work that we're doing for someone to explain how they need to log onto their computer and what are the steps they need to go through. It really changes your perspective when you're like, I get annoyed when I type my password in wrong once, and it's an everyday thing. So really enabling those who are more junior than you to be able to use your connections to expand their network and provide opportunities for others in the organization to really see the diversity of the teams that we all are working with.
Mm-hmm. Being in the tech industry, one thing I get very excited about is interrupting the bias. So how can we use artificial intelligence and other things to interrupt bias in our recruiting processes? And sometimes, whether it's if you're having a team meeting or a brainstorming, using whiteboarding technology, that equalizes everybody's ideas, right? So it's not the senior person speaking first and others piling on, but I have found that very powerful. We do it with our clients in terms of ideation and design thinking, and we now are turning that practice inwards, and I have found that's very helpful in terms of bringing out different ideas that we can build on. Have others had experience with leveraging tech or other tools and tactics to help democratize creative ideas? Other insights to share?
I think in general, design thinking technologies do that quite well, that they level out the team, right? And everybody can contribute in a different way. Also working in agile teams is a similar effect because you take roles compared to hierarchy-based positions that you take, right? So it shakes up the system. Also working with clients in that way is a very interesting experience. If you expose leaders to be members of an agile team, it's a very different dynamic. And opens up in a different way, the contributions that everybody can make into a team, despite having, formally speaking, different hierarchy levels that might be there.
Yes, and I think making sure that certain people don't get what we call the office housework, right? And so being very cognizant and how you interrupt some of the bias that just happens naturally when you're working in teams. Ellie, you're smiling. You may have a...
No, I'm smiling because I think we all have some examples around that, but I was thinking more simplistic also from the perspective of when we think about actions besides how to leverage technology, is also, if we think about the word inclusion and what it means, and if we think about diversity, right, and some of you may have heard this already, diversity is a fact. It is what you represent. It is who you are, your gender, your ethnicity, your orientation. That is your diversity. Inclusion is a choice we make every single day. And one example that I think we can all relate to, since we're at this conference, is we're all going to be involved in networking events. And I don't know too many people that get up saying, I can't wait to go to 3 networking events today, right? I mean, we all have a lot going on. And for some people, it's downright painful. So I want you to visualize this, right? You are at an event, you have to carve out time to be there, you have multiple competing priorities, and then you walk in and you don't know anyone in that room. And you see a group of people talking and you're trying to figure out where do you insert yourself. So for that group of people that are talking, chances are they've noticed people trying to find a home and where to insert themselves, right? That's a moment, that's a choice of inclusion. So you can choose at that moment to turn and welcome this person in and say, hey, join our conversation. Or you could choose to turn your shoulder ever so slightly and ignore all those trying to get in and continue in your conversation. Inclusion really is about how you're stepping forward to make the culture or the setting or the opportunity for someone out there to feel like there's a sense of belonging and there's an opportunity for them to engage in a conversation. So I bring that very simplistic sort of example into play because when we think about actions, that's one we can all choose to take at any given time throughout our career.
I think a lot of times people will say diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, but that sense of belonging is dancing like you just don't care. And that's what we're looking to do in terms of creating that sense of community and that sense of belonging. And sometimes, and Dave, we were talking about this before the panel started, kind of the communication style or the tenor in a certain group may not be as welcoming. So how as leaders might we change that dynamic, right? And how can we as individuals in that team create that ecosystem really where everybody can thrive and can do their best work? So I think that's really important. So in terms of, Robert, speaking of clients in the context of diversity, igniting innovation, why is this important and where have you seen this most prevalently? And then as we're thinking about growing our AMBG business, why is this more important now more than ever?
I was alluding to the fact of experiences before already. So as AMBG, I mean, we are delivering professional services. It can't be more human. So first thing, we are not selling a product that is manufactured somewhere. It's just us, how we are there each day. So we need to somehow obviously find and match our way, how we reflect and work with the culture of our clients in a different way. That means continuously adapting. And if you talk about experiences, so for 30 years, the whole research was around economies of scale and scope, and we get all this, right? And the larger the network, the more innovation comes out of it. Today, if you look at how partnerships, alliances are done and how ecosystems come together, they are mainly defined around experiences they need to offer in order to enrich your brand. And the same holds true actually for AMBG. So if you talk about experiences, then a diverse group of people needs to come together to actually create winning and meaningful experience for our clients to work with us and help our clients to do the same thing around their products and services. And you can't deliver an experience by just having the most intelligent group of engineers in the room. It might be the most clever solution ever, but typically they don't look very nice, and this doesn't feel very nice. It's technically brilliant, but it doesn't really rock you, right? But if you think about it, needs to deliver an experience. People need to work with it. People need to live with that, what you are trying to produce. Then suddenly you invite very different people to join the party and trying to deliver this piece of work and that experience.
Wonderful. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time. I know there are going to be many questions from the audience. So let's open it up. If you have a question that you would like to direct to any one of the panelists or for any of the colleagues that may be here in the audience. So we have 2 microphones in the front and towards the back. If you have a burning question, please do walk forward. All right, Dave, I knew I could count on you. And we have another gentleman in the back as well.
So, good morning, everyone. Dave Siebold with Avanade. I really enjoyed the panel, so thank you, Liz, for leading this, and thank you, all of you, for doing this. One thing I'd love to hear you talk about is, and it's interesting, we've heard the term AMBG a few times. I don't know how many people know what that means, but acronyms can be a form of exclusion if you're not careful. So
yes,
the Accenture Microsoft Business Group, which is an entity inside our company that focuses on the Microsoft partnership, is something where we're building that integration. But I'd love to hear you talk about communication strategies. One of the things, whether it's diversity or inclusion, that we find is when you go through the business, certain segments of the business are diverse in different ways, inevitably. And that's not necessarily good or bad. And then collectively, and as the business comes together, it's altogether quite diverse. But in individual segments, it may not be for a variety of reasons, primarily tying back to maybe experience, which could be the most relevant thing being offered in our business to clients. The community where the experience reside may not be as diverse as we would like. However, again, it varies community to community. So if you could talk a little bit about the complexity of communicating your diversity and inclusion goals and how you're progressing toward that, I'd love to hear more about that.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'll open it up to the panel and share my thoughts as well.
So happy to start. From an Accenture perspective, we became very focused many years ago to make sure that at the very top of our leadership, there was a common narrative around inclusion and diversity. There was a common expectation that their leadership groups understood, and then the groups below understood that this was a business imperative for us, recognizing your point, Dave, right? That some parts of the business are gonna be more diverse than others, in many ways how we define diversity. But the way we sort of tackled that was, we said we have global goals around inclusion and diversity, and because they are global goals, every geography, every country, every city is accountable to help us reach those global goals. So it starts to become a universal language instead of a very specific sort of divisive language around different areas of the business. And we executed that through our Global Accenture Diversity Council, which consists of our most influential top leaders, because we felt that our council had to be a council of people that can affect change. And I know in many organizations, there are different types of advisory groups and councils and committees and all these things, and they're great. And a lot of times you have people that are very passionate around this topic, and passion is always welcomed, but passion alone is not going to execute change. It's got to be passion. It's got to be people that are influential to affect the change. So that's how we focus on getting the wider communication around inclusion, diversity at Accenture. And I can tell you from all the stages, and I'll stop after this because I could go on forever. There are the 5 stages, right? There's the basic, there's the right thing to do, there's the business case, there's the responsibility and accountability. I think at Accenture, as we've gone through this journey for so many years, we're now at a point that every single person, no matter where they sit, no matter what level, they feel a sense of responsibility to create that inclusive culture. That has taken years and years and years of really structured, intentional execution.
And I also would say congratulations for being recognized as Refinitiv's Inclusion and Diversity Award recipient for the 2nd year in a row as the #1 recognition. So congratulations.
It takes all of our people, almost 500,000. So yes.
Yeah. And Dave, I would add and build to that. I think, yes, we have kind of the overarching goals at the top, but you really need to understand what are some of the challenges in that particular business. And so earlier this year, we launched an inclusion index that gives us greater data and insights so that we really can address some of those root cause challenges that may exist at that micro level. And so that has given us some new insights that we did not have previously. And I like to think of it as what are those moments that matter? We've really been building, I see a table from the UK, we have our whole Moments That Matter blog series, and that is employees telling their own stories. It's inspiring others. It's this organic change. Yes, I think you need tone at the top, but we've also found this organic change is very inspiring. So it's those moments that matter from an employee perspective, and then those moments that inspire from a leader's perspective, and combining that is very powerful. Yes, we have another question from the audience. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Danny from Belgium. And I have a question, and how do you encapsulate an inclusion factor people with autism at work? And are going further in this, how do you go into people with autism and a normal to high IQ into onboarding them into hiring? And also, how do you go with the same person once hired if there's some problem arise due to the autism, for example, a bit slower or difficulties with coping with deadlines? How do you handle this?
Yes, I know Accenture has some great examples in terms of
I was going to
civility
say, share the
inclusion.
example you shared last night, but I'll be happy to go first. So thank you for asking that question. It is very much part of our focus. I'll give you one specific example. As we were bringing in people through the autism spectrum, what we decided to do was we wanted to educate our leaders and the peer group of that particular project. We were bringing in the talent to help them understand and become more aware of the different work styles that people bring to the table depending where they fall in the spectrum. So when we did that and we educated the leaders and the peer group, it was a very successful transition because we have to think about the fact that we all make judgments the first 7 seconds when we meet someone, right? That is the bias that goes into play. That is a very human sort of, interaction within our brain. So our focus was we want to bring in the talent, but we have to create an environment where people understand and have awareness around the talent. So that has worked very well for us to make sure that we're creating greater awareness in different work styles. And you shared an example last night of...
I did. Melissa or Robert, any examples that you would share with regard to people on the autism spectrum within your teams and how you've worked together?
I don't have any examples.
No, probably, but it goes the same way. That it's about educating actually the team around it, making it aware, and it actually requires the person itself to come as true self to work and actually to invite to help, right? And if others are educated and informed in the right way, then it starts working out, and we can value the different strengths and also weaknesses that we have.
In our Singapore business, we have partnered with ARC, which is the Autism Resources Center, and we have developed a pilot program whereby we're hiring people in, but importantly, making sure they have the support system such that when they're within the organization, whether it's mentors, Nellie, you mentioned the importance of training hiring managers and others around, and having that ongoing communication, so as challenges arise, we can be intentional. As we think about people with disabilities more broadly, there are so many more, whether it's accessibility tools and other support systems that we are proactively leveraging. How many people here attended the neurodiversity panel earlier this week? Right, some of you may have spoken on it. That was also, just for me personally, very poignant in terms of the individual stories, but how companies now really are working proactively to support individuals. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning, Patrick Taborin. Thanks for the panel first. One question, you talk about technology that can help for helping the inclusion. At the same time, technology can have bias.
Yes.
Especially when we are moving to artificial intelligence, depending how it will be done, depending of the ethic behind it, depending of the culture, we talk about how it could be different. So how do you see us working towards removing barriers from technology and avoid what we are seeing in drugs, or we were talking about crash tests not being done with women for quite some time. Or how do you see us evolving in that direction, or be able to tackle that one?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, so I know there's been research done that the more diverse teams that you have working on those products, the less bias comes out, right? Where you have a team that all, has similar values, you'll end up with a product that reflects those values more. So I think through all of our work in terms of, building diverse teams, that's where we will continue to see bias taken out of those systems.
We have a very strong focus on the ethics in AI as well. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the net roulette. It was done, there were two researchers. One was a Microsoft woman, and I'm forgetting the name of the other gentleman. See, there's my own bias. I'm biased towards Microsoft. And they very intentionally brought this to the forefront. There was a database that had looked at images over a 20-year segment, and they would associate adjectives when they would, with facial recognition, when they would see an image. And more often, when it was a white face, they would associate positive adjectives. For people of color, again, this is a 20-year-old database, they would associate more negative, wrongdoer, criminal, et cetera. And so by bringing this to the forefront, they were very intentional in terms of increasing awareness that some of the bias exists in these algorithms so that we can then more proactively address it. Also, many governments or police agencies are not using facial recognition because of some of the bias that exists. So I would say, it's really critical to understand the algorithms that are behind it, having the diverse teams so that it is caught earlier, and really being attuned to where this might exist around us.
Spot on.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Yes, another question in the back.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm from Michigan, and I work in higher education. I'm an administrator and a professor at a private university. And I think what I'm going to mention is it deals with the dynamics of cultural changes within an organization. So this is maybe more of an organizational, internal question dealing with diversity. Our situation, and I think other schools are like this, we have online programs. We also have what's known as off-campus programs, and these are sites that are throughout the state, but we also have a main campus. Our main campus has been around for 150 years, and they were actually, they're like the mother campus, so to speak. But and within the last 30 years, our off-campus sites have been created, and along with online. The diversity question is this. As we're trying to become one university, and it's a challenge because there is a sense that the off-campus, and I'm from the Metro Detroit area, so a lot of we have African American, many diverse kinds of population there. In our mother campus area, that tends to, that's a small percentage of African Americans and diversity. So if you all could speak to any experience you have in working with, like within an organizational culture, trying to get one section that's been traditionally one way, and you got a newer one that's a lot more diverse, how do you gently bring them together to become one family?
Wow. So I almost want to go to your campus and visit it and sit there with you. This is what we call reshaping a culture. And when you're trying to reshape a culture, there are a lot of challenges associated with that. But what I have discovered in working within Accenture and with our clients across industry is that the first awareness is that there is a desire to do so. What is the burning platform to want to sort of shift things around so it doesn't become the mother campus and then there's the city campus, and then you start to see the divide when it comes to the racial representation. So in a case like that, my recommendation will always be is to focus on a strategy to do better integration. So it is going to be about setting goals. What goals do you have to be able to increase the representation at the mother campus versus in the other virtual campuses that exist? With that comes a lot of disruption, a little agitation, and a little courage, but all with the intention of solving for that goal that you believe is going to be the right move for the culture of the university. So that's not going to give you an A through C right now, but what it's going to give you is the opportunity to go back and ask yourselves is, why is this important? How important is it? Where does it fall in the line of priorities? And what goals are we going to set to be able to execute on some actions to reshape this culture? And that's probably the best I can give you from this stage at this moment.
Right, and I'm happy to talk offline. My alma mater has been very intentional in terms of looking at it holistically in terms of the inclusive excellence, so I can share some insights being involved. And Melissa, I know you're very involved with the Chicago mentorship program.
Yeah, so I was going to say kind of a similar type program that we are doing is we've started an apprenticeship program with the City Colleges of Chicago where we bring students who are close to an associate's degree into Accenture. Now it's across North America. We have about 300 in a variety of different places connecting with other community colleges. But this was a situation where we didn't bring anyone into Accenture who had an associate's degree 4 years ago, and now we have brought students in, and really the success of the program was really based on the first students we brought in and showing the success that we were able to have with a very small group and sharing those success stories, and then having other groups within Accenture, both our client-facing organization as well as other internal groups, wanting to sign up to have these students who often had no other opportunity to interact with a corporation before. And it's just, it's worked really well to talk through the success stories and share, those very diverse stories with people who had not had that exposure before.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another question in the front, and then I think we have time for the question in the front and the question in the back, and then we will go to closing thoughts.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I work for Microsoft Netherlands. I'm originally from the United States and also spent a lot of time in France. I've been an expat for the last 25 years. And so I'm really interested in language and how we work. Everyone's speaking English in this room, right? Which is, it can be exclusive. There are a lot of people in the world that don't speak English. I'm interested in Accenture and Avanade. What is your corporate language, and how do you help, or do you have an intentional system to help people who aren't native English speakers in your different organizations?
Well, quickly, for Accenture, our common language, our universal language is English. I think the way we have, what I don't think, I shouldn't say I think, the fact is that it is expected that if you're going to be hired by Accenture, that is a language that you possess and you're able to communicate in English. However, having said that, we also have been very vigilant about the fact that not everyone feels super comfortable being on global calls and speaking up in those global calls because they may have a very heavy accent or they might command the language the way they would command it in their native tongue, right? So what we have done is we've created the awareness with our leaders to understand that you have to pull people into those conversations. We also, I remember many, many years ago, if you would go to another office and we had English-speaking leaders there, it was an expectation that no one would speak their native tongue and native language. That has relaxed a whole lot within our organization and our culture. Even here in the US, when we have people from Latin America and I'm in a room with them, I will speak to them in Spanish. But also being very respectful about the fact that if we're talking about business, we want to make sure we're speaking a language that everybody understands, because otherwise that will be exclusion, and that wouldn't be an inclusive culture, right? But that's as real as it gets for us. It is expected that English is the universal language.
And what about cross-cultural learnings? Meaning, like, do you do any coaching in terms of how different people from different nations might speak differently, or what is polite in different religions?
Absolutely. So we use a tool. So now this is going to be a plug for this external firm that we use. But we use a tool called GlobeSmart. And GlobeSmart, we're able to share that globally with our people to understand if they're going from one country to the other. Look at GlobeSmart to take a look at, what the cultural norms are, the do's and don'ts. We also have a tool specific to our LGBTQ plus community to understand what countries, we have flagged as red, yellow, or green when it comes to the demographic and, the safe environment in that demographic. So we're very conscious and aware of all the things that we need to do to empower people and equip people to understand those cultural norms.
Thank you.
And I would say we've been very intentional where appropriate to translate documents, training materials into local language so people can also digest and really be more comfortable. And I want to be cognizant that we have one more question, and I know I'm seeing the time clock here, but please ask your question. And
thank you. I'll try and be quick. My name is Maninder, and I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. I also feel like I'm a champion of diversity and inclusion. But I was raised in a time when we were told and we were messaged about assimilation, normalization, becoming a certain persona in order to fit in. I was raised in that. I'm trying to not raise my children that way. My parents really fell into that as being first-generation immigrants into the Western countries. So as a professional, I find myself trying to champion, but some part of me inside being almost skeptical about what we're trying to do to kind of frame this conversation. What guidance would you provide to people who have that little bit of hesitancy about, is the intention going to meet what we really expect, or are we going to be disappointed when we keep trying to go down this route to bring our whole selves to work and essentially find ourselves not being fully accepted?
I'm happy to go and make it really quick because this is a great question. So I will tell you what I tell everybody is when we have these cultural norms, and I have it as well, right, where I was taught don't speak up, respect the leader, be respectful, just sit down, be appreciative and blessed for what you have. All these things were embedded into my head. When I was younger, I was told we went to the lobby of our building. We were one of few Hispanic Americans in the building. Everybody else was Caucasian. I was told, don't speak if they're Caucasian people in the lobby, right? We wanted to almost be invisible because of, fear of racial sort of conversations. I took all of that with me into college and into the workplace until I had that moment of, I earned the right to be here. And I have to show up, and I do have to challenge leaders, and I have to speak up, and I have to own my career, and I have to be able to get comfortable with that. So, I mentioned that word courage earlier. I made that my brand, and part of that was because I had to challenge a lot of the ways I was raised, again, with all the right intentions from my parents, and I admire our culture, but there are pieces of our culture that don't sit well in the corporate culture. And we have to have the courage to sort of pause and think through those and pivot where we need to be able to show up and have those leadership roles. And I'm glad what you said, that you're trying to teach your children differently, because there are pieces that work for the culture and there are pieces that need some adjustment in this environment. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank our amazing panel for sharing both your insights and your inspiration. And thank you to all of you here today. So continue the dialogue. We have breakfast, there's coffee, and thank you for your ideas. And I would say just one thing, if you can remember, please, to vote. Use your tickets. There are voting buttons, voting boxes in the back. We are very honored to partner with these external organizations and really to help them continue their great work. So thank you all very much for your support.